Um, I was raised in a bunch of different radical religious groups, and eventually went on to join a community that turned into a cult by the time I was leaving, which felt like a natural progression because of the way that I had been raised to be really radical. That was the epitome of commitment and dedication to something.
So today I have Christina with me, Christina Carlson.
And you're here to tell us your story. So I am very curious. What is the story that you want to share with us today?
Yeah, hi. I'm so happy to be here. My story is really one of growing up in a way that disconnected me from myself, my intuition, and my body, and the slow return and continual return of myself to me. So that's the brief synopsis of it. I was raised in a bunch of different radical religious groups, and eventually went on to join a community that turned into a cult by the time I was leaving, which felt like a natural progression because of the way that I had been raised to be really radical. That was the epitome of commitment and dedication to something. So naturally, I'm a very strong-willed person and very very dedicated to things because of trauma, and also just by nature of who I am. Um, yeah. What do you want to know about specifically?
Hey, so I was uh, intrigued by uh, cults. Maybe a little bit about myself. I was raised in a very Catholic household. Um, so yeah, it has culty tendencies sometimes, and I'm fascinated by the whole concept of cults and how one actually uh, gets into one, and what is, I don't, yeah, can I say a drive to kind of who you're in a cult? Yeah, I'm just very curious.
Yeah. Okay, I love that you say that. Like, because of my experiences, I'm kind of obsessed with documentaries surrounding like religious groups and
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yes. I love any like documentary or drama that involves like someone scamming other people or like or cults, because it's a very similar thing. There's this over promising of what you'll be receiving, and then you're treated very poorly in the process of that, and it just kind of gets worse and worse. And whether you're being scammed or you're being cult scammed, it's like the same kind of concept. Um for me, like my earliest memories are reading stories about missionaries, which, are just like mostly 99% white colonizers who were just like trying to conquer the world for Jesus and destroy cultures, right? And it's like not the birth of, but like a huge wave of colonization and cultural appropriation, really. When you look at Christianity, the things in it that are good have been culturally appropriated from other cultures. So I like, with all these early stories of people going out and like dying or like suffering for a cause, like those were my bedtime stories. Those were my heroes. So the people that we were told to look up to were extremely radical. And from my earliest memories as well, I was in vacation Bible school, which is like just groups of, learning about the Bible for a week or whatever. But the rhetoric that we were given was that we were soldiers for Jesus. Like there was a lot of warlike language. And if you look in the Old Testament of the Bible, there's a lot of war, there's a lot of killing, there's a lot of violence, especially against women, but in general, just violence and wiping out whole cultures. So it kind of makes sense that that narrative just kind of went in there. All that to say, like, that's extreme, right? Like that's
Yeah.
It's like, what?
So people and these things, and yeah.
It's a lot. So like that kind of growing up with that narrative, like the people who we were taught to not be lukewarm. It was dangerous if you were lukewarm, which meant you were not fully committed. So if you were not fully committed, you would go to hell. And so like the more dedicated and more committed you were, or the safer you were, as far as like, seeing your family after you die and being on God's good side and like all of these things. They wouldn't put it like that. It would be, you want to have a close relationship with Jesus for the sake of love, but there's always like the gun to your head of hell. So it's like not really free, right? So what?
No, I said I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seemed to me like the more extreme, the better. And like I had some parameters around that, obviously, but like inched into it slowly over time, it like sort of made sense, like because I'd watched people and read about people who would go places and just like die. And that was like the goal. Like I really had hoped that I would like become a martyr by the age of 33. I was like, I don't think I'm going to live past 33. Because that would be like an honor to die for the cause, right? And so I like didn't have a vision for my life beyond that when I was in that space. But all that's to say, like the community that I joined in Hawaii was a Bible college. That was like a branch off of Calvary Chapel, which is a Christian denomination, a fundamentalist Christian denomination in the US, or based in the US. And they opened a campus in Hawaii. And so I went there as a study abroad. And I it's Hawaii. I had a great time. Like I kept going back. I went back for an internship and then I went back to work there. And we like, this is such a white people thing. We really glamorize poverty. And like, and the truth is like, we were poor growing up. Like we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't know that at the time, but like there was this like, and for us, it was a way of coping. For a lot of other people, it was just a way of like an excuse to not help people. But it was like this glamorization of not having a lot. And they're like, look, people are so happy when they don't have a lot. And it was just like, you too can be happy if you just have Jesus and don't have a lot, right? And so I like was kind of conditioned into like being really scrappy. And like, I mean, I'm grateful for the fact that I can jerry rig a bunch of shit and like have a bunch of weird skills, right? Like it's not a bad thing. But like I also just like didn't bat an eye at like poor conditions, So like we in our Hawaii campus, like the first time I went, we were staying in an abandoned or had been abandoned old folks home. So it was like just this one building that was like probably not up to code. I don't know. But it was pretty, it wasn't like, here's college. Like it was just like, you have a building to live in.
Yeah. On top of your head, you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And so then the next time I went back, we stayed in tents. And they're like these army tents that are built on platforms. And the bathrooms that we had were porta potties. And the kitchen that we were working in was under a tent, like just under a tarp. Yeah. So the ground was gravel. There was a tarp. There was like open trash cans. And we were cooking in there. And then we were doing our dishes like in a goat field. Like there was like an industrial sink there, but it was like there's goats right behind there. And like I look back and I was like, what had been wondering like why I was sick. It was just like, well, us college kids were washing dishes by goats.
But how long did you stay there? Situation.
For the tent part, I think I was there like a total of a year and a half, separate times. So it was like separate times I had stayed down there. And then I eventually like got a living room floor I slept on for like 4 of the months. that I did my job there. They paid us almost nothing. Like it was like, this is Hawaii, so like it's expensive even then. And I think I had like $60 a week for groceries, and yeah, and like one meal was like $10, you know? So I was like trying to find ways to get food, and like it was just not it was not great. I didn't mind. I thought it was an adventure. Um but this was all under the premise of you're training to be a missionary, or you're here for a greater purpose. So these things don't matter as much. This is like discipline, this is learning, this is building character, whatever. And so like it was during the final time that I went there. I was there for a year and a half as like an actual staff member for the Bible college. And during that time, I started to hear things that I'd already known about, but I wasn't involved in the leadership. So I learned that they were shunning people, like people who had done things that the church didn't agree with. They would kick them out of church and then like ignore them around town. This pastor would be like, you can't talk with them unless it's to like ask them to make reparations and come back. Which is, literally shunning. So something like this had been happening like subtly, like over the course of my time there. And the pastor, who was really charismatic and everyone liked him, was growing a little bit more like, I don't want to, like, I'm so like gentle around this. It seemed aggressive, like the way that he was like treating staff members, not like physically aggressive, but like emotionally. And there was just like people he started just kicking out who just disagreed with him. And then there was another church split. So like one of the pastors left and started a new church because he didn't like how he was doing things. And those people weren't really allowed to hang out together, like because there was like this rift or whatever. So I remember one time I had a friend. This was like this was kind of it for me. This was like, oh, this is a cult. This isn't okay. Yeah. I had a friend who he was a youth pastor, and somehow it was found out that he had had sex 3 years prior before he came to work at the church. Yeah. And he hadn't told the church staff there that he had had sex.
I mean, so it's such a private thing.
This sweet human was like was engaged at the time that this rumor came out. His fiance knew and was like, had quote unquote forgiven him because, in this community that is a sin and is a problem or whatever. He apparently had like made things right with the girl that he'd slept with years before. But the church found out and they took it very personally. So this pastor had him come up on stage in the middle of church, read a statement about this, and then he continued to like talk about how like this is a breach of whatever and whatever. And like, I'm just like, this is public humiliation. Like, what is going on?
Wow.
So I went up to his fiance and was just like hugging her as we're watching this happen. And I'm like, what? So it gets weirder. There continues to be meetings because this person wants to be back with the church. So he's like, I'll do what I have to. Like, he works for the church. This is his job. This is his livelihood. So he's trying to get, his job back, like get right in the church again or whatever. So there's like meetings being held intense about like what should be done to like make it gets too extensive. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. So he leaves. And I still keep in touch with them. I'm still a part of this culty church. And at one point I go over because his fiance graduates from nursing school and we celebrate her. While we're there, we find like, I learn that like she's living with a family who is a part of the culty church. And somehow the pastor, the big pastor guy, finds out that she's living with a member of his congregation. So he tells the member of his congregation, you can't have her living in your house because she's engaged to the guy that we kicked out. So she loses her housing, and then they end up living together, which I'm pretty sure that happened, which I thought was really funny. It was like, you're gonna kick her out, then where's she gonna go?
It's the irony in it.
I mean, they're getting married. They got married, but it was so like you threaten one of your members of your congregation that she can't have a tenant in her house. Yeah. And the member that you threaten is a single mom. And like her community you're threatening her community. So then she has to kick this person out because she's going to lose her community. Anyway, this isn't my story, but I was definitely in the heart of it. I knew these people.
Yeah.
I say all of this because it deeply affected me and how I experienced what was going on. Because the most troubling thing for me that stuck with me for the next like 4 years while I was like kind of starting to like take apart my faith was like they believed in the same things that I was taught growing up. They took the Bible literally. Mm-hmm. They like all of the tenets of the faith were the same. And this was the result. And it's like, you can do that with this and have it completely justified. Like they technically did nothing wrong. They followed Matthew 18. They followed like these same things that like, and that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there was so many points in your story that I was like, kind of triggered, but there's some things like, okay, I'll go back to like the camping situation. First, when you were describing it, because I'm from a Caribbean island, and it's like similar to how we would have camping. Like during Easter, we have camping week, and or other times we would have like a camping weekend, and it sounds similar. But then I was like, oh, it kind of sounds fun, and I was like, no, this is a complete. We're not gonna go for camping, but you're actually there working. So yeah, that was a thought that came in down to the goats, if we have a lot of goats on the island.
And I loved the goats.
And donkeys. That's a side story. But yeah, how you were describing the control and the control tactics, I faintly had a flashback because I used to be an altar girl. Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
in Catholicism, you help the priest, right? And during mass, and so I was an altar girl. Then I stopped, and then my mom would kind of like I don't want to say force. I was trying to get a nicer word for it, but she would force me to be there every Sunday, and I would go, but I would be so bored that at some time I decided, okay, then I'm just gonna be altar girl again. If I have to be here anyway, then at least I'm moving around and it's not as boring. So I applied to be an altar girl again, and there were some changes with this priest that he had. That after every mass, you had to read this prayer. Sorry, even my language, orasyon. Yeah, we have to read this prayer, and the thing is, I'm a slow reader, first of all, and sometimes when I'm reading, I would get lost in where I was. So it helps me to kind of like mimic it with my mouth where I am. So for me, because it was my first time reading this prayer, I had to kind of get used to it. I was kind of mimicking it. So because I was mimicking it, it didn't come out loud. And then the priest singled me out. He told me like, he stood me there in front of the rest of the altar people. And he was like, you have to read it by yourself now, because I didn't hear you. So that moment of your friend being in front of everyone and being humiliated, that kind of brought me that flashback of this. It was humiliation in front of this group of peers. Um, so if I wanted to defend the church as maybe not as cold till now, that went out of the window right there. um, but yeah, this I definitely recognize these moments of the control, and also as you were saying, the documentaries. So I also watched a lot of documentaries, and this is a common theme: the control, the cutting people off when they have an issue with the leader, or the leader usually have issue with them. Um, and I almost thought I did think of Scientology also at some point, and that's what I've been watching mostly of lately. They get what's the word for it? Like they get
Collateral.
yeah, no, they have because they have like Scientology jargon for it when you are caught.
Oh,
Um, um, it's not gonna come right now. It's not important, but the point is that this is a thing that happens. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The humiliation part is also very important. Um, Almost kind of like crowd forming. Like the crowd has to agree to this mindset, and it has to all correlate to the mindset of the leader, or else.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm so glad you brought up that experience. I'm really sorry that happened to you because that is humiliation. And it's so interesting because like in those scenarios, like in our child minds, we're like, well, it wasn't that bad. I'm fine. Like, but the experience of what's happening there is someone who has power over you, an adult figure, or like even if you are an adult, but it's someone in authority, in a position of authority, since it's a hierarchical structure. There's someone over you taking something away from you and then saying that they're the person that you need to make it right.
Yeah,
So it's like they created a problem and then they're like, and here, you can fix it.
yeah,
But it's going to cost you your like self-worth. It's going to cost you your value. Like it's going to cost you your sense of self because they don't want you to have that.
yeah. And as you're saying that, my head even went into my relationship. I had a toxic relationship, and it's a similar process in the slowly tearing down of your wall and your confidence, and kind of telling you that you won't be anything essentially without them, and to the extent that and it took this person like 5 years to get me to this point where um though part of me, maybe the one that went in uh, the relationship would have been like, get out. Me 5 years later, after that process of constant humiliation and building down my wall, um, I couldn't see how my life would be better without her. And I was like, now I'm like, really?
Oh, yeah. It's so hard. Like I feel like I don't know if you heard this expression, but it's like you can't see the forest for the trees. Like where you're just like, if you're in it, it's just like right there, and that's all you can see and that's all you can feel. And like it takes like some sort of catalyst, someone outside to hold up like a mirror or an image of like the forest, and then you're like, oh wait, but there's like more stuff over there.
Uh, there's some berry trees over there. I thought, oh,
Feels nice.
yeah. And so this process with your friend kind of opened your eyes in a way to what was going on, and then you thought this is a cold, and once you thought, oh, this is a cold, did you get out immediately, or what happened there?
Yeah, I made a plan to leave. I had like a very soft exit, like a safe exit, because my the semester before, the person that I was dating, he was the head of the school, and he got like pneumonia and had mold in his lungs because of the tent situation. So he like got really sick and he kept getting staph infections. Like it was not good. He was very sick. So he had to leave the island for health reasons. So the semester before, he like had a very easy out, even though he was already having some issues with the pastor. It was just kind of like the Lord is clearly calling you to another place, you know. Very convenient. But the thing was that he and I, when we were one of the things that he and I had in our dynamic was that we argued about everything. And I don't mean like petty arguments. I mean like we fucking love to debate. It was just every topic. It's like, let's look at it from 50 different angles. Like that's just how our minds work. And we really believed in like I forget what Greek philosopher it is, but like the question everything and bring people into the questioning, and that's how you learn, which is so like not Christian. It's funny, like looking back.
but blindly, right? Yes.
Yeah. Well, we were determined and believed that ultimately it would lead back to God because, like, of course, like, you know, we thought that was the ultimate truth. So in our like conversations with Bible college students, we would bring up things that the pastor had said and would ask the students, like, what are your thoughts on this? And what's your perspective? Somehow rumor got back to the pastor that we were having these discussions. And he had like a discussion with us and was like, look, if you have any issue with anything I'm saying, you need to bring it directly to me because you're stirring up trouble in like in the student body or whatever. Like we're causing discord because we're discussing things. So that really rubbed both of us the wrong way. It was just like, we're not allowed to like have a different opinion than you. And if we have a different opinion than you, we can't just like talk about it. We have to bring it directly to you. Like, why? Which is very sketchy. So I stayed for one more semester. I stayed off campus. I got a house with the family up in the mountains that was attending the other community, the one that had left. I was still required most of the time to attend the one that I was like, that was affiliated with the school. So I was still going there most of the time, but towards the end, I was just like, fuck it. I'm already quitting. Like I'm just going to the one that I liked, but it was so wrought with distress. And like my same friend who got humiliated when his girlfriend his fiance graduated from nursing school, they had a party for her. And they invited people from both churches to go on the beach at night to have a party that was run only by text because like they didn't want the pastor to find out and get their people in trouble with the other. It was just like, so beyond.
But did they find out, the pastors?
I don't know. I left, and I think I chatted with a couple of people after that said it got worse, but I was gone. It was just like, I don't want anything to do with like whatever that was because it was not headed in a good direction.
I'm surprised that they didn't make a deal out of you staying in the house because you're not supposed to have contact with the other church, right?
Yeah, I think because they already knew that I was leaving, it was like something that was like,
yeah, they chose their battle in this case.
Yeah, they that church community or the Bible college, I think, and the church got cut off from Calvary Chapel. So the denomination that they had branched off of, Calvary Chapel, said they didn't want anything to do with them because of the way that they were. So it was like even more extreme than that. They were just like, we don't want our name associated with that. So it's technically it wasn't a Calvary Chapel when this is happening because they got their rights denounced or whatever. But anyway, that's just a bunch of it's not really gossip, it's the truth. But that happened while I was there. It was really interesting because like just like anything and just like any abusive situation and relationship, we learn things, right? Like there's a lot that we gain from those experiences. Not like every experience of abuse, but like a whole span of time. And we feel really conflicted about it sometimes when people leave and they're just like, it was shit because I was in an abusive situation. It's like, well, actually, like there's a lot of fond memories I have from being there. There's relationships that I formed with some of those people that was like really beautiful. There's like aspects to it that it's just like, well, yeah, there was a lot of good. I actually learned hula there from the Hawaiian women in the church, and that is fucking the reason that I left. It reconnected me to my body in a way that I was just like, this is nothing I've ever had like a capacity for, or like I didn't know that this was here. I didn't know that I was here. And so that was like really profound, and I think is the reason that like I was able to come home to myself at all, was because of that. So it's like it's definitely not all bad. The women who taught me hula, those that group of people, like I owe a lot to them. Not the pastor.
Well, it's always the thing I believe in these cases where you have like I'm gonna call it toxic relationships. um that of course there's moments that you have fond memories of. Um and I'm always thinking I don't want to come off like, oh, it was completely bad and horrible for 5 years. I mean, if there wasn't any um moments of pockets of joy, then they wouldn't have lasted for 5 years. I would like to believe. I hope. Um, but yeah, it's difficult for me sometimes to give that a place, while also acknowledging that no, it was pretty it was pretty fucked up at the same time, you know.
Yeah. I really think that we kind of believe in our culture that we need to have a solid stance, or like a really binary answer. But that's like not how life works, and that's not how people work. Like we do things for a reason. If we stay in an abusive relationship, we're doing it for a reason. Not because we're idiots, but because we're getting something from it, or because we can't leave for this reason. We get some sort of safety, we get some sort of like feedback. There's something going on there that we don't know how else to meet that need at that time.
Yeah.
We're not stupid. And so there's always something that we're like, life is just like it's a soup. It's not like a glass of water and chocolate milk over here. It's like we're all mixed up.
Yeah, I'm in a way very intrigued by those gray areas in grade. I mean, that's why I have gray in my name, in my artistic name. Right, it's like I'm intrigued in those gray areas. But then that was a side note, and
I like it.
I was curious. After you left, how was life? How was discovering yourself, essentially, apart from the scope?
Yeah. I think after that began like probably one of the darkest years of my life. I was still dating the person that I was dating there, and he moved to my hometown with me, and we were planning on living there until I graduated college and then getting married. And after having the experience of doing hula and getting in touch with my physical sensations, I started to feel a lot more of my emotions in my body. And every time we talked about the future together, anytime we discussed marriage, I would feel physically ill. And we were constantly talking about like, should we be together? Should we not? And I was always like in debates with God, like not arguing with him, but like, will you please just tell me what to do? Like, should we stay together? Should we not? Give me a sign. Like, I need to know, because I didn't trust my own feeling of like, I'm not happy. That wasn't like enough for me to be like, well, then it's not good. I was like, I need a sign from God to end this thing. And So that last year was just like I felt more feels and tried to repress it and use my brain to logic myself into like staying for so long, and it was so distressing until finally I very much like you reading that prayer for the first time, I basically whispered the words like I think I need a break. And like I knew once I had let that part out of my body, like I knew it was over for me. Like I knew that I wouldn't have said that unless I was ready to just like fucking run. And I only let myself say that because I truly was like I would rather be alone for the rest of my life than feel like this. And that's that's really rough, but like
I completely, I was there. I've been in this moment, but go on. Yes.
yes, yes. You know how full body that experience is of just like I think I was just like full on shaking when I was finally like because we went like another week and a half before I like graduated college um and then I was like we need to talk. Like basically in this little stint of a break, my brother and his wife came home and they were like, we're moving to Kansas City and we have an extra room. I don't know if they just didn't like him or like how I was so sad all the time, but they didn't know we were breaking up yet. They were just like, why don't you come live with us? And I like, it was just like my exit ramp. You know, all the memes with like the car that veers off the highway. That was like me. It's just, like, I am out. So I mean, I blamed it on God, you know, of course. Just like this obviously isn't God's will because of, you know, I feel like God's spoken to me. Um, I think I did us both a huge favor. Um, and I slowly started to rebuild from there. I was really heartbroken. Like I really just hadn't been anyone without him for like I'd known him for 7 years and we've been off and on, whether friends or actually dating or whatever, throughout the course of that time. Like I loved him that whole time. So for me it was just like this, I'm completely broken, like I need to rebuild. So I went into this phase of like really like I'm gonna rededicate my life to God, and like I full on like deep studied harder than I had even in Bible college, which like was a lot. And I really just like walked my way out of it. Like it was just like, oh, this is like if God is actually good, then like here's what's possible. And it was like in my commitment to truly seeing God rather than just adopting what I had been told, I really began to see things very differently. And Rob Bell was a huge proponent in that for me. He's a Christian pastor. He wouldn't, I don't know, he probably uses the word Christian just because. But he's a universalist and a humanist. He uses the Bible to teach things, but it's from a beautiful lens. I'd still listen to his stuff now. He's what he does is he doesn't believe that the Bible is literal, and he doesn't take anything like at their face value. So for me, it was just like, here's a door to actually knowing a God that's good. And it was like, again, that exit ramp was just like, oh, this actually feels good in my body. And yeah, so I just kept kind of walking in that direction.
Do you still consider yourself a Christian?
No, I don't feel like I relate to that label at all. I went full on atheist for like 6 months and then was just like, wait a minute, like, but belief is like fun and interesting. And like, there's way more than like, I don't know. I really like ideas and like, I like the gray like you. I have an open mind. I'm just like very always like curious. So I got into a spiritual community, with Sora Schilling at Devoted Energy Coaching School and did energy coaching study with her and like kind of uncovered a spirituality that was like really beautiful to me and actually felt like there was like room for whole people to exist in there with difference.
Yeah, I resonate. It's the word that I was looking for. I resonate with that. For me, my personal path that I took is that I got so angry at some point that I was like obliged to go to church and then all of these things that I too went somewhat atheist at some point. Um, so though I have to say that my friend once said like, yeah, but I think that doesn't believe in anything. She just believed that we're like um wavy or something around. And I was like, that's also not it. And then once that happened, it's just like I'm like, I just don't believe that there's a white bearded guy on a cloud watching my every move and everyone else's every move. And it's like I generally thought that if I did something bad that he didn't approve of, that wasn't in the Bible or was condemned in the Bible, that he would send out like a lightning rod or something, and like I will be gone from this earth. Like, that's how uh, that fear kind of was living inside me, and I was like, that's also not a fun way to. It's not at peace. Uh, and then there's the other side that I wasn't allowed my bisexuality because woman with men, and that's the only way, and etc. And um, so in that also I didn't feel comfortable. I remember I was still kind of going to church. I was talking to this church girl, and I mentioned my bisexuality. Like I trusted her enough to tell her about this, which is a big deal. And she was like, "You know that God exists, don't you?" And I was like, "What?" And then that means that I'm not allowed to be bisexual, even if it did exist hypothetically. um, yeah. And at that point, I didn't want to go into discussion, and I just told them. I respect you for whatever you believe, and I would also like to be respected for my,
Yeah.
you know, um,
Those responses are so harmful.
yeah, it's. I'm laughing because I asked my friend once, a very good friend. I'm still talking to this one, but we also had. She was very religious. She wasn't Catholic. Um, but she was struggling, and I was a bit more I don't give a fuck if I struggling. I was like, I think she was still like, no, I gotta pray and this and that, and work with the people say in the church. um, I asked her once, but what if I believe in unicorns though? Like, that, what what if that was my belief, and I would act the same way as you, trying to convince you. But the unicorns are totally real, though. Like unicorns are gonna strike you if you do something bad. Like that's the level of ridiculousness for to me.
You would have been a fun person to deconstruct around.
Thank you. Wow, that's yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I have an open mic that I'm joining in 10 minutes. So I would have loved to continue this conversation with you.
Yes.
Maybe we have to get together another time to continue talking.
I'd be down for that.
Okay. And to close off, is there anything you want to share with the audience at this moment?
Well, yeah, simply that, like, if you're in a process of like deconstructing something, whether that be your faith or like the way that relationships operate, like take your time with it. If you need to, and pretend there's unicorns if that helps you feel better. There's no wrong way to change your mind about something, and go at the pace that it feels good for your nervous system. And if you need support, that's a huge part of what my coaching is about.
And how do they find you if they want your coaching?
Yeah, ChristinaHomeCarlson.com. That's ChristianaMcarlson.com.
Thank you. Until next time on the phone.
Until next time.